Welcome to the first ever episode of Linking the Chains, Sports Links podcast talking all things Ball State football. I'm your host, Isaiah Rosner, and I'm super excited to finally get this thing on the road. Of course, we didn't have a week one game with Army not able to make it, but Ball State finally playing their first one and getting that win over Missouri State in week two. We'll have Daniel Sullivan on a little bit later to give his analysis of Ball State's win as well as the upcoming game against the Miami Hurricanes. But first, I want to recap how this win for Ball State ended up happening. So we're going to have some audio for you from our great home broadcast. So you'll be hearing Dominic Liacani on SportsLink Digital Radio, as well as Mick Tidrow from Learfield. If you're watching as opposed to just listening, you'll also see these plays shot by some of our fantastic cameramen here at SportsLink. But getting started, the first two drives of the game both ended in punts, and so let's go ahead and get started with Ball State's first drive of the game. It did end in a score, but not the way Ball State would have wanted.
Two wide receivers out to the right, one to the left here for Samanza. Maximus Webster, the fullback, goes in motion, then back to his original position. Can't pick it, fumbles the football, and it's intercepted. Down the sideline goes P.J. Hall. He has to get past Samanza, and he does. Hall will go all the way into the end zone. Touchdown, Missouri State.
A combination of Cade and Samanza throwing and Braden Sloan running led Ball State right down the field on their next drive, but they wound up settling for this 38-yard field goal.
Snap is good, the hold is down, the kick is up, and it's low, and no good. It sails wide left.
After Ball State forced three straight incompletions and a punt to start the second quarter, they again stormed right down the field, and again they found themselves in a tough spot with a 3rd and goal from the 15-yard line.
Three wide receivers split out left. Samanza claps the hands, takes a snap. 3rd and goal, looks toward Magwood. Nobody's open. Samanza scampers. He has open daylight, jumps toward the end zone, barrels in, and he is in. First touchdown of Team 100's season. Ball State's an extra point away from tying it up.
The first half ended tied at 7. The first 3 possessions of the second half didn't see a single first down. And then on the next possession, Ball State ended up going for it on 4th and 3.
3 wide receivers motion out to the right. Samanza looking right. Pocket collapses, and he's going to be taken down in the backfield. Kanye Young on the blitz. The middle linebacker gets to Samanza. And another stuff by the Missouri State defense.
The Bears then took a 14-7 lead with a 5-yard rushing touchdown. So the Cardinals needed a spark on offense, and they got it via Malcolm Gilly.
Samanza claps the hands. Here comes the pass rush. Samanza throws a slant route, caught by Gilly. Breaks one tackle, breaks a second. Malcolm Gilly's off to the races. Malcolm Gilly scores. It's a Ball State touchdown, 41 yards out on 4th down, and Ball State is an extra point away from tying this thing up in the 3rd quarter.
The ensuing extra point tied the game at 14, and then the momentum really swung Ball State's way.
Short kick that's going to reach around the 20-yard line, taken in by Devontae Key, and he is gobbled up by the defense of Ball State. The ball came out, and the Cardinals are saying they have it. It was George Udo there, the usual sniper on the defensive side of the ball. And are they going to say Cardinal football? Yes, they will, it looks like.
Taking advantage of the phenomenal field position, Samanza made an impressive run on 3rd down to keep the touchdown hopes alive. Shortly after, they were realized when Sloan got in the end zone for the first time as a Cardinal.
3 wide receivers right. It's another toss to Sloan. He catches it, barrels toward the end zone, and it's a Cardinals touchdown. Braden Sloan gives Ball State its first lead of the season, and it's his first career Cardinals score.
Ball State continued the momentum with this defensive play.
Clark fires it over the middle. It's deflected and picked off, and then the ball comes free out of the hands of Joey Stemler.
Samanza's first touchdown of the game came on a 3rd and goal from the 15. This one was a similar position, a 3rd and 13 from Missouri State's 16-yard line.
A wide receiver out to the right for Samanza, coupled to the left. Samanza looking right, has space on the right, runs towards the 20, slings one over, touchdown Cardinals. That's Keon Magwood. And that was a Mahomes-like throw from Cade and Samanza.
The offensive explosion continued with each team scoring another touchdown. With Ball State ahead by 14 with 2 minutes to play, the game appeared to be in hand. But Missouri State once again marched right down the field, leading to one of the strangest moments you'll see in a football game.
Played in 11 of the 12 games last year. And what's going on here? The Ball State defense wasn't even lined up. Jacob Clark and the entire offense lined up. He threw it into the end zone for a touchdown. Ball State was still huddled up towards the 10-yard line. More flags fly. And Ryan Beard is hot.
The Bears did score a legitimate touchdown a few plays later, and after Tanner Koziel recovered an onside kick, Ball State appeared to seal the game with this.
Cards up 8 against Missouri State. A stop, and Missouri State has a chance. Samanza under center, turns around, gives it to Sloan, jumps through the zone, and he has open daylight. Braden Sloan scoots in for an exclamation mark.
But Missouri State wasn't done quite yet. After marching right down the field again, Jamaria Robinson caught a 14-yard touchdown pass in the back right corner of the end zone. With 13 seconds to go, the hopes for Missouri State relied on securing this onside kick.
Once again, we'll go for an onside kick. Last time it was recovered by Tanner Koziel. Let's see what happens here. A high kick, and it will be almost recovered by Missouri State. It just trickled out of bounds near the 40-yard line on the near side.
Ball State, of course, kneeled, securing a 42-34 win, and meaning they have won 15 of their past 16 home openers. I'll give you my thoughts on it in a second, but first, our very own Sam Neiger had the chance to talk with head coach Mike Neu.
Coach, a great win after week one against Missouri State. Now you got a tough opponent on the road against Miami. What's your thoughts about going against an opponent playing in an NFL stadium? It's going to be a hostile crowd.
No question. Miami has done a great job through 2 weeks here. They've had 2 dominating wins on the road at Florida and then their home game there against Florida A&M. So we know it's going to be a great challenge. Most importantly for us, though, now we got a tape. Now we finally got a chance to play a game, so we got a lot of film to attack on our end, and looking forward to making a bunch of improvement from week 1 to week 2 for us. But we got to keep our focus on what we're doing on the practice field here, our preparation for Miami, because they've done a great job in the transfer portal. They've added some key pieces, none bigger than Cam Ward. He's playing as good of quarterback play as anybody in the country right now. All the hype that you hear for Heisman is real, because when you turn on the tape and watch, there's some throws that he's making that guys on Sunday aren't making some of those throws.
Yeah, we're going to be hearing a lot about Cam Ward this week. One thing that he has not faced over these first 2 weeks is pressure. How do you get pressure against him? Specifically, those linebackers are the leaders of your team. Are we going to see some pressure from the secondary?
Well, their offensive line's probably not getting enough credit, because they return 3 guys that have played a lot of football for them at a high level, been all-conference player. They've added some key pieces into the mix from the transfer portal. So when you look at tape, they've done a great job up front of giving him time to operate and to keep his eyes downfield to make some big plays. So, yeah, any way that we can get him off his mark, any way that we can get some pressure on him, any way that we can make him uncomfortable in the pocket, obviously we'll be after that all week long here in terms of our preparation to see what we can do to make him uncomfortable that way.
Well, speaking of our quarterback, Caden Samanza, he had a great performance week 1. What were your original takeaways from that first performance from him?
It was great to see for him. He's had such a great offseason, though. So when he stepped in the other day, and he did a great job of running the show offensively, distributing the football, making good decisions. I wasn't surprised because I had a chance to see that from him all offseason, starting way back when we had spring practice and when we got into the summertime, then when we got into training camp. So nobody's worked harder this offseason than he has to prepare himself, and it was good to see him step in and instill confidence in the guys around him, and you really lead us down the stretch here in the second half to, because obviously, the game ebbs and flows. First half wasn't as clean as we would like it to be, but for him to lead us down the stretch and to make some of the throws that he made in critical situations was awesome.
I'm impressed as well with Braden Sloan. I was impressed by his physicality specifically. What makes him such a special runner?
Yeah, I think his patience as a runner, and he just continued to get stronger as the game went on. It was great to see him get himself in the end zone, both rushing TD, and he had one through the air as well. He had good production in terms of all-purpose. Had over 100 yards rushing in his first game, so a lot to build on there. But again, the credit goes to our guys up front, the guys in the trenches when we needed them down the stretch. That experience showed up to be able to finish off the game the way that we did. Those guys really did a great job.
Yeah, I love that offensive line, the tightness that group has, but they're facing a tough test against Miami this week as well. What is their message, knowing that they're going to be facing probably one of the best defenses they'll see all season?
Yeah, there's no question about it. Obviously Miami's going to challenge you from the time the ball is kicked off. They're going to play man coverage. They're going to put a lot of people in the box. They're going to challenge you. We know that. that. Obviously, we've been hard at work studying the tape, getting ourselves prepared. So it's not a secret; it is a challenge. These are the games you look forward to, though, as a competitor. You want to go against the best and see where you stack up. So our guys will embrace that. We played in some tough places before. Playing at Tennessee, playing at Penn State. Our guys have been in those situations. So it's going to be a great opportunity that way.
And this is our first week traveling as well. It is kind of a trip down there to Miami. What's the message to the guys? How does your preparation change knowing that you do have that built-in travel day?
Yeah, and obviously, somewhat similar to, when we traveled down to Georgia last year, and it's going to be somewhat similar. So, we'll still have a normal week here once we finish our practice Friday morning, then we'll get on a plane and fly down there and then have our evening schedule there. So our guys know what that schedule looks like. It's, again, just making sure that, we do a great job of focusing on our preparation this week.
Yeah, looking forward to this one, Coach. Good luck to you.
Okay, thank you.
Always great to hear what Mike Neu has to say about that performance as well as the next one. Now I want to give you some of my thoughts on this one. 42-34 is the final score over the Missouri State Bears. So starting off, of course, we've got to talk about the quarterback, Cade Samanza. I believe he started near the beginning of the season last year, and it seemed like he was doing pretty well, and then they went more with the running option in Kyle Kelly. But now as a redshirt freshman, he looks so good out there, and it's something I really hope can continue. And I mean, part of it is you do need to be cautious looking that it's against an FCS opponent, but man, even considering that, some of those throws were super good. I felt like he was really sharp all game. Looking at the stat line, people are going to see the one interception. Actually, it was a pick six, and nearly another one later that got called back for a correct defensive holding penalty. But the interception wasn't his fault. The other one wouldn't have been either, just bounced off of the receiver's hand. So really, there weren't any really bad moments for Samanza in this one. The announcers criticized him for taking a sack, the ESPN Plus announcers, I should say, for taking a sack on that one fourth down play. But, I mean, the one guy said to throw it away. I'm not sure if I really agree with that. You don't want to throw it away on fourth down. I mean, as great as the offensive line was, I feel like that one was more on the line. Of course, I don't see exactly what Samanza saw. I don't have an all-22 to look at for this one. But in general, it seemed like Samanza was super sharp all game. I think most people would agree with that, but I'm really excited about what he could bring for the future of this team. And hopefully it doesn't play too well, or else this might be his last season with Ball State. But either way, definitely a great chance that they could they could contend for the MAC potentially. I mean, there's a lot of things to need to clean up on there, particularly on defense, but it's a very promising start. Quarterback, we know, is the most important position in football by far. In fact, potentially the most important position in sports. And Samanza seems like a really great option for Ball State right now. Talking about offense more, Braden Sloan, man, how about the game he had and just the chemistry he had, the synergy between him, even in his first game with Ball State, and that veteran offensive line. I'm not sure who was more impressive between the O-line and Sloan, but Sloan just seemed to find the right holes in general, and I can't think of a bad run that he did all game. Ends up with 21 carries for 103 yards, just under 5 yards per carry, got a touchdown, but actually a total of 149 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns in total. Samanza was sharp, 28 for 39, 262 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 INT that, again, wasn't his fault, as well as he actually had 5 touchdowns when you count Samanza's rushing touchdown, which was quite the run as well, which, as you heard from the radio call there. So, man, it's hard to find much bad with this offense. The line was great. The quarterback was great. The running back was great. I guess wide receiver-wise, we hope the injury situation isn't serious. But, man, Cam Pickett, 7 catches for 69 yards. You got Malcolm Gilley with 5 catches for 63 and a touchdown. Also had that 46-yard kickoff return, which set up Ball State in fantastic field position. And then, of course, the tight end, Tanner Koziel, kind of the security blanket at times, 6 receptions for 60 yards and a score as well. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I feel like, of course, the stats aren't going to look great. Against an FCS opponent, you did allow 320 yards. Of course, Ball State got 435, but maybe the expectations were a little bit better. 258 of those allowed were passing yards compared to just 62 rush yards. So potentially rush defense being fine, pass defense needing some improvement. That said, I feel like the stats were a little bit misleading in this one. And the reason is they were so dominant in that first half, and there were just so many drives. And both teams were moving the ball very quickly down the field. They weren't giving the defense time to breathe, which is fine. We're fine with Ball State scoring quickly, but at the same time, you're going to have to expect there to be some fatigue on the defensive side of the ball, and I feel like that's kind of what happened late in the game. They were getting tired. The secondary was getting tired, and that led to the Bears kind of easily going down the field. Another thing you can blame a little bit is the prevent defense, which I think was appropriate at this time. A lot of times people will talk about coaches, and rightfully talk about coaches that maybe do it too often or do it in circumstances where they shouldn't. But in this one, I feel like they did need the prevent defense. I mean, that last touchdown that Missouri State scores, I think we're okay with them scoring one with 13 seconds remaining on the clock. So I think the coaching was good. They did exactly what you would want on the defensive side of the ball. Now, of course, it wasn't perfect. As many excuses as I can give, they did allow that 258 passing yards. That does need to be better, not necessarily number-wise, but just when considering who the opponent is in the future. And so there were some holes in the secondary. But overall, I think the secondary wasn't nearly as bad as many people are saying. It was just a very fast-paced game, high-energy game on both sides of the ball, and the defense is going to suffer statistically from that. The pass rush, though, I actually would say was also not as bad as the stats would suggest, because they only got home one time, but I remember so many plays where there was just great pressure. I mean, I talked about the one where there was, in segment 1, where there were 3 straight incompletions. Well, the first and third incompletion of that drive were both all due to pressure. Just phenomenal pressure, both by the defensive line and by blitzing. Really good blitzes drawn up by the Ball State defense. And then that second play was just kind of a mess up on a screen by Missouri State. But I think even if that went to the correct player, they had it covered anyway. So I felt really good about the defensive line, really good about the pass rush for Ball State. And yes, the secondary could use some work, but overall, I don't think it's some sort of disaster, even though they may have allowed 34 points against this FCS team. What is interesting is the yards per play. When you consider Ball State got so many more yards, they beat Missouri State by 115 yards. You wouldn't expect Missouri State to have more yards per play, but that was the case, 5.8 versus 5.4 for Ball State. Another thing, just looking at stats, I mean, you can watch the game, but stat-wise, some things I don't notice as much and when I watch it. And I even watched the game twice and didn't notice that Ball State had 19 third down attempts and converted 12 of them. And that's just such a good number. Also makes me wonder how they got into that many third down opportunities. But part of that is just the sheer number of drives this game had, particularly, or pretty much only in the second half. It was pretty crazy. Ball State also 1 for 3 on fourth down. Missouri State 3 for 10 on third down and did not actually have a fourth down attempt all day. But when we talk about the number of the yards per play versus the total yards, it makes sense when you see Ball State had 80 plays in the game compared to the Bears 55, and they had 38-30 in terms of time of possession versus 21-30. Kind of reminds me of the Colts game, of course, going the wrong way as I'm a Colts fan, and the Texans with exactly 2/3 of the time of possession in that one. Of course, just the 1 sack for Ball State, 3 for Missouri State. But again, I'm not super worried about either line for Ball State. I think both of those stats are misleading, and seeing some advanced stats would be good on this one. The one thing that I think should be cleaned up is the penalties. There were 7 penalties called on Ball State for a total of 52 yards, and that's understandable for the first game of the season. That's not a disaster, but you do want that to be a little better. And of course, we had the weird double penalty where Ball State went off sides on 4th and 10, and then did it again in spectacular fashion, which we've discussed and we'll continue to discuss. But yeah, overall, 7 penalties, a little bit too many. I would like to see them get that cleaned up. But yeah, overall, looking ahead, Miami Hurricanes. We'll get to that more later with Daniel Sullivan. But yeah, that's going to be a tough ask for Ball State, kind of the opposite situation where you went from a team that's in a lower division to a team that's a few tiers above you in the Hurricanes. But hey, never say never. That could be a fun one. Either way, that will end this segment of the show. And now we will go ahead and show you an interview with the center for the Ball State football team. We talked about how great their offensive line was. So Sam Neiger also had a chance to catch up with Ethan Crowe. We'll be back in a second here on Linking the Chains.
Here with offensive lineman Ethan Crowe after a great win on Saturday against Missouri State. The offensive line looked really sharp. You guys opened up some holes for Braden Sloan. What's it like blocking for such a patient runner like Sloan?
It's awesome because he lets the play develop, let it happen, let us do our jobs, and it helps him score those touchdowns.
Yeah, and one of the biggest takeaways was Cade Samanza's performance. What's it like blocking for a guy like Samanza? I mean, he goes through his progressions. He looks a lot more seasoned than he really is. What's it like playing in front of a guy like that?
Oh, it's awesome just because he will throw the ball or he will tuck the ball and go get that first down himself. It's awesome.
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways, I think, just school-wide was the student section. You and I were just chatting about it. They were impressive. What was your biggest takeaway? How do we get that fan retention?
I think we keep doing like what basketball does, doing all that. Just as long as those fans are there, I think it's always fun to play in front of all the fans.
Yeah, fun matchup this weekend against Miami. First time traveling this season. I know you've got some experience on the road in big stadiums. What's this one going to be like? How are you communicating to the young guys what these big away games are like?
Just kind of the same thing. It's just a football game. It's what we've been doing for the last 20 years, basically. Just playing the football game, enjoying it. It's no different, just a bigger stadium, more fans.
Yeah, you're going to be facing a defense that shut down even a team as good as Florida. What's the message right now? How are you preparing for those Miami schemes?
Literally just making sure we get down our little techniques to make sure that we are perfectly sound up front, just doing our job the best we can.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of confidence heading into week one. Obviously took care of business. What's the confidence like heading into a top 10 matchup?
Feeling pretty good. Nothing's going to change. It's just a game.
Yeah. Love it. Well, good luck this weekend. Thanks to Ethan Crowe. We'll send you back to the studio for Inside the Chirp.
All right, some great insight there from Ethan Crowe. Now I'm going to be joined, though, by our guest, Daniel Sullivan. Daniel, you're a freshman in SportsLink. First of all, thanks for joining me, but how have you liked it so far? How's the SportsLink program treating you?
It's been awesome. Meeting my fellow freshmen has been really cool. All of the upperclassmen have been super welcoming. They're breaking us in slow. I'm having a fantastic time here.
Well, that's great to hear, but let's start off with the football game. Your thoughts on that? Of course, Ball State getting that win. Starting off with Cade Samanza, I was mentioning earlier, I thought he had a really stellar performance. What were your thoughts on that?
Samanza has just awesome upside. Obviously, his stats are very good. I think 28 for 39, 4 touchdowns. What impressed me the most was how he recovered from that pick six he threw. It's really easy to dig yourself a mental hole after that, especially being a freshman. I know he played some games last year, but this is his team this year, and obviously not what you envision your first half of the season being, but to come out after halftime, put the pick six behind him, and really have a fantastic day. I thought that was very encouraging, very veteran-like from the young quarterback.
I do wonder if it helped that it wasn't really his fault. You know, it was the wide receiver that I forget who it was, but that dropped that one, and then he almost had the identical thing later on in the game, which of course luckily got called back for us. But yeah, man, Samanza just sharp out there, and then kind of in a similar vein, how much does it matter against an FCS opponent? I mean, they'll be in the FBS next year, but considering their FCS, do you still take a lot from that game?
I think you do. FCS, FBS, when you put the pads on, it's a real team over there that has a real shot at beating you. And I don't think the Cardinals should take any credit away from their win based on who their opponent was. I thought the resolve they showed against a really tough opponent is what matters.
They're going the opposite direction, of course, next week. We'll talk about that in a second. But back to the Ball State offense. Braden Sloan, man, I mean, his first game with the Cardinals, it's hard to say much negative, in my opinion. But man, is he going to be the new star of the Ball State offense, do you think?
Oh, nothing negative at all. New star. I don't know if you can call anyone a star after one game. But certainly I think he established himself as the number one option for the Cardinals on the ground. And I think that's really important with the freshman quarterback in Samanza. If they have to go away from that at some point in the season, they'll be very comfortable doing that. And I also think a lot of credit should be given to the offensive line for their performance on Saturday. Very veteran-led group, tons of experience there. And I thought it showed. They gave Samanza a lot of time in the pocket as well. I was very impressed by the ground game, very impressed.
Of course, we've seen Carson Steele now on the Chiefs playing fullback, and he got a few kick returns in that opening game on Thursday. So that was fun to watch for all of us Ball State students and Ball State fans. But man, some part of me wonders how would it be to see him running behind this Ball State offensive line? Because I mean, it was good when he was here, but I feel like it's improved even more. And like you said, the leadership's gotten even higher.
It has improved. They have a different sort of swagger about them. You can see it in the preseason. It's just a calmer group, I think, and they understand the expectations and they're not overwhelmed by them. They know each other very well, and yeah, to have Steele running behind these five would be awesome. But we have a fantastic running back in Braden Sloan. And I should also mention, I saw 4 or 5 guys carrying the ball. You had Cade Kelly coming in, taking carries out of the Wildcat. Obviously, Samanza, dual threat quarterback with his feet. I think we have a really, really balanced running attack centered around Sloan and those 5 guys.
Yeah, for sure. It was quite a lot of fun to watch. A really high-paced game, but unfortunately for Ball State, when I say it was a fast-paced, high-scoring game, that goes on the other side as well. So maybe not quite as clean on defense. I mentioned earlier I thought the defense didn't do as poorly as the stats would suggest. But what were your thoughts on that, especially with all the scoring that went on late in the second half?
They were put in some tough spots for sure with field position, things like that. That being said, I think they'll want a lot more out of their defensive line. Obviously, everybody is new on that defensive line up front. And I think they only got home for 1 sack on the day. They're going to want to do a lot better than that, especially in conference play. And it was just too much time for the secondary to have to defend. I thought the linebacker core showed a lot of promise. Obviously, Keontae Newsome is the foundation of that defense. He's the vocal leader. He's the team captain. But being only one of 2 returning starters, there's only so much he can do. I think they have a lot to work on week to week, but I think it'll continue to get better.
Newsome did lead the team with 4 solo tackles, although he wasn't the team's tackling leader. That was Joey Stemler with the 7 tackles, as well as the sole interception for Ball State in that game. Moving on, though, I've got to mention that weird play near the end that ended up getting called back. I still wonder if that should have been called a touchdown, because I mean, I understand the unabated to the quarterback idea, but there was no player that was even considering getting to the quarterback. So what were your thoughts on that play?
Super weird. I've watched way too much football in my life, and I've never seen a play like that. Obviously, when it happened, I think everybody was very confused as to how that could possibly count. I think they ended up just giving them the offside penalty, because if it had counted, there would have been a riot at the shoe. Super strange, though. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that?
I can't think of a time I have, and I've watched a lot of high school football as well. That's where you would expect to see that, or even Pee Wee football. I don't think I've seen it, but yeah, it was very bizarre. I'm wondering if there wasn't good communication between the officials and the players, but I also wonder why Ball State, including the coaching staff, assumed the play wasn't about to happen. Like what made them think that after, because they got the initial 5-yard offside penalty because they had a 4th and 10 upcoming and ended up getting the first down with 2 straight penalties.
Yeah. I think there was a lack of communication between the officials and the Ball State defensive unit as to what was actually going on. I think they were on the field trying to steal a timeout, and Missouri State saw that, said, hey, they have their guys on the field. This could be an eligible play. Let's run something, see if we can get something out of it. So I don't think the officials communicated well enough to Ball State that Missouri State could even run a play or that the play clock was running. It's very confusing overall. I'm glad it ended up just being a penalty. Otherwise, it really would have been national news that it counted.
Yeah, Missouri State did end up getting a touchdown, but in much less embarrassing fashion than what it would have been, as you said. So moving on to this weekend's game, well, they're taking on the number 10 team in the nation, the Miami Hurricanes, who are 2-0 so far. Can they be the second MAC team to pull off an upset? And before I let you answer, I'd like to mention this would be an even larger upset, as Notre Dame was favored by 28.5 against NIU, at least on the betting line I saw, versus Miami, who is a 36-point favorite, meaning this would be one of the greatest upsets of all time if Ball State could pull it off.
It would be one of the greatest upsets of all time. And if you do it, you're the biggest storyline in the country. Obviously, Northern Illinois got ranked after their win over Notre Dame. So obviously that's something to aspire to. But you also have to remember there's conference play coming up. You want to stay out of the blue tent. You do not want to pick up any injuries here at Miami that'll hamper you for the rest of the season. I think Samanza, it's the optimist in me, I think Samanza has enough upside to beat anybody in this country when it's his day. And I think he has the weapons to do it. Obviously, losing Ty Robinson on that first play was heartbreaking, but I still think he has the weapons to do it. But being realistic, Cam Ward is a fantastic quarterback, Heisman candidate, and I think the team will look for any positives that they can take out of Miami to take with them into conference play.
Ward already 689 passing yards on a 75% completion percentage, six tutties and 1 INT in his first 2 matchups, both dominating wins for the Hurricanes. Staying in that vein, though, assuming Ball State doesn't pull off the miracle, what can you take from playing a team that's so much more talented than you?
Well, only good things, right? I think it helps guys when you play a tough non-conference game like that. When they go back into conference, it's a little slower for them, not as overwhelming. Certainly, it's the hardest thing you're going to do all season. I think road environments become a little bit less intimidating down the line. And I think you can get a lot of confidence from reps that you win against those guys that are, there's NFL prospects on both sides of the ball for Miami. And especially, like you said, playing such a talented quarterback like Cam Ward. Any downs that you can win, any stops you have, any scores you have are huge confidence boosters that you can take with you throughout the whole season. And especially if they can keep it close, compete, maybe win. That's just it's a feeling of, we can do it within the whole team.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned, of course, the hostile environment they'll have, even more so at a school that large. But they actually do have, this is the first of 3 straight road games for Ball State. So do you think that maybe this one could help them in the future games playing against the away crowd?
100%. They have those road games, but I think this is the most intense environment they'll see all season, and especially with the hype around the team that they're playing. Like I said, this is the hardest mountain that they have to summit all season. After that, I think they'll be able to put the matchups into context, whether that's on the road at James Madison or at Vanderbilt, schools that don't have as big of a reputation as Miami. Huge reputations for sure. That's still a road game in, Division I FBS football. But after playing against Miami on the road in that environment, I don't think that there will really be any nerves about getting rattled by an opposing crowd on Saturdays.
Well, that will just about wrap it up. Any final words on Ball State football before we call it a day?
I mean, look, we're 1-0, and that's all you can ask for, right? And there's a really nice part of the schedule coming up where you're playing on the road. Obviously, you start conference play against Central Michigan, but there's not many expectations to come out of this road trip 4-0. So anything that they can get on the road to bring into conference play with them, they're in a really, really good spot.
Well, this is Daniel Sullivan. Thanks for joining me. A lot of fun here in the first episode of Linking the Chains. Thank you to everyone who is listening or watching to this one. Watching this one. That will do it for episode 1 of Linking the Chains. I'm Isaiah Rosner. We'll see you next time.